Let's jump right in. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are untangling the massive, enduring cultural footprint of Spider-Man. We're going to look at this iconic character from three totally different angles. We'll start with the deep sociological themes behind his universal appeal, pivot to the passionate debates over his cinematic portrayals, and then wrap things up with some incredibly juicy breaking leaks about his MCU future. Superheroes have become a symbol of hope and justice in a distressing world. That brilliant quote from a Whittier College research paper perfectly sets up our journey today. It really hits the nail on the head regarding why a simple comic book character holds so much weight in modern culture. We often think of superheroes as just pure escapism, right? But academic research suggests they are way more than that. They're actually reflections of our own societal struggles and our deep desires for justice when the real world just feels overwhelmingly complex. So here's how we're breaking things down today. First, we'll look at the working class hero. Second, we'll dive into the Andrew Garfield debate. Third, we're unpacking leaks for a brand new day. And finally, we'll see how the Spider-Verse keeps expanding. All right, starting with part one, a working class hero, we'll be focusing on the sociological weight of Peter Parker. So, an academic paper from researcher Annika Gonzalez out of Whittier College explored the 2002 Tobey Maguire Spider-Man film through a super fascinating sociological lens. It wasn't just looking at the special effects or the CGI web swinging, it was analyzing what Peter Parker actually represents to the average viewer on a much deeper level. The researchers actually impartially applied Marxist theory to the film. Now, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, using this academic framework provides a really sharp lens to view the narrative. It highlights how the story deliberately pits the working class, the proletariat, against ruthless, exploitative corporate powers. Under this lens, Spider-Man isn't just punching colorful villains, he's fundamentally battling a system that's completely stacked against the everyday person. You can see this exact contrast perfectly baked into the character's origins. On one side, you have Peter's Uncle Ben, who gets laid off after 35 years as a senior electrician, just to, upsize corporate profits. He's treated as entirely replaceable labor. Contrast that with Norman Osborn, representing the wealthy bourgeoisie. To protect his massive military funding, Osborn takes immense risks, literally valuing his profit margins over the safety and lives of his own workers, like Dr. Strom. It's a night and day difference. The source material even takes this a step further, comparing Osborn's ruthless board of directors and their power struggles to real-world financial disasters, specifically the Enron scandals of the early 2000s. Just like Enron executives who gave themselves these massive golden parachutes while their employees' retirements were totally wiped out, the board members of Oscorp are willing to sacrifice literally anyone to maintain their power. The film uses the Green Goblin to show the steep, often completely immoral price of upward mobility in a corporate-dominated world. And honestly, it makes Peter Parker's dedication to just being a friendly neighborhood hero, someone who flat out refuses to exploit others for personal gain, incredibly profound. Moving on to part two, the Andrew Garfield debate. Let's look at some subjective views on the man behind the mask. Now, across these three distinct cinematic eras, fans have fiercely debated who actually wore the mask best. You have Tobey Maguire, who laid the foundation, and then Tom Holland, who brought the character into the massive Avengers blockbuster era. But there is a very vocal contingent of fans and critics, like the author of a passionate op-ed from The Review, arguing that the middle child, Andrew Garfield, was criminally underrated. They argue he's perhaps the absolute best true actor to ever take on the role. So I want you to consider this question because it's kind of like a fascinating cinematic puzzle. The op-ed points out that Garfield broke out in The Social Network, showing acting chops that the author literally compares to titans like Tom Hanks and Dustin Hoffman. So if he had that level of raw talent, what exactly went wrong with his amazing Spider-Man films? Why didn't they capture that same universal acclaim? Well, according to the op-ed, the problem was absolutely not Garfield. His brilliant, emotionally resonant performance was sabotaged by a perfect storm of production issues. He was basically left to carry a totally dysfunctional franchise that was bogged down by insufficient funding, awful casting choices, like, say, Dandy Han's villainous performance, weak screenwriting, and a mountain of off-screen drama that completely crippled the creative process. The op-ed perfectly contrasts the two eras to really hammer this point home. It totally concedes that while Maguire's films absolutely had better plots and far superior villains, Garfield's individual performance was just unmatched. The author praises Garfield's deep emotional range, his incredibly authentic and frankly heartbreaking on-screen romance with Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy, and his natural, unforced comedic timing. Garfield somehow managed to bring this charming flair and elegance to a franchise that was otherwise crumbling around him. All right, let's pivot to part 3. Leaks, specifically A Brand New Day. We are unpacking the MCU spoilers. So the crucial point from the recently leaked synopsis by Murphy's Multiverse is the absolute state we find our hero in. Following a time jump after the events of No Way Home, Peter is completely alone. Thanks to Doctor Strange's spell, he's been forgotten by the world. He is carrying the immense burden of protecting the city entirely on his own. No family, no friends, no backup, plunging him into what the leak actually calls a neogenic nightmare. This leaked synopsis uncovers some massive, rapid-fire spoilers that we've got to talk about. First up, Peter apparently undergoes a genetic mutation giving him organic webbing, which, by the way, is a plotline ripped right out of the 90s animated series, and this causes a sudden loss of bodily control. On top of all that physical and mental isolation, he's facing an absolute gauntlet of villains, the ninja clan known as the Hand, Tarantula, and Boomerang. Plus, there's a huge tease about a mysterious figure lurking in the shadows. Insiders are speculating it could be Tombstone, or even Sadie Sink as Jean Grey. Talk about a jam-packed narrative. And that brings us to part 4. The Spider-Verse keeps expanding. Let's tie it all together. So, considering his working-class roots and the intense debates we've seen over his on-screen vulnerability, will this brand new day storyline finally be the perfect culmination of Peter Parker's cinematic journey? Will stripping the character of his entire support system force him right back to those core relatable elements that made him such a massive phenomenon back in 1962? It's a fascinating evolution to watch, and it really makes you wonder, does Spider-Man absolutely need to suffer to be the hero we want? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the media you love.